Good morning everyone. I thought I'll put out a video giving you my impressions of the Triumph T120 after owning it now for a few months. I'll get one thing out the way, I'm not a professional motorcycle reviewer, I'm just an old bloke that rides one. So let's get the specs out the way first. It's a 1198cc liquid cooled 8 valve single overhead cam parallel twin, the high torque version, with a 270 degree crank. Can you tell I'm reading this? Delivers 80 horsepower at 6,550 revs, with 105 newton meters of torque at 3,100 revs. A 6-speed transmission with a chain final drive, delivers power to the back wheel. The suspension is front Kayaba 41mm forks and rear Kayaba twin shocks with adjustable preload. Front brakes are a twin 310mm disc with 2-piston Nissin floating calipers. The rear brakes are single 255mm disc with again Nissan 2-piston floating caliper. ABS is standard. Seat height is 785mm, which is 30.9 inches. It has a wet weight of 236 kilos and a fuel capacity of 14.4 litres. Okay, that's the reading bit out the way. Right, the T120 for my mind has two things that most other modern motorcycles miss. That is charm and soul. You do get a few that have those, a few of your cruisers for instance, but the T120 and other modern classics have them in abundance. If you were to ask a child to draw a motorbike, 99 times out of 100 they would draw something that looks like it. They would only draw a crotch rocket or a huge bagger for instance if the parents happened to own one and they were around them all the time. But it isn't just looks. Underneath that outward appearance, you have a fully modern machine with ABS, traction control, ride modes, electronic fuel injection, etc. And when you twist the throttle, it does pull like a freight train, with a 0 to 60 of 3.8 seconds and a top speed of 120 miles an hour. Now that might not be in sports bike territory, but it certainly is no slouch. As for the bike's ergonomics, I'm 5'10", with a 29-inch inseam, and I can flat foot it with no problems whatsoever. If I do have one criticism of the ergonomics of the bike, it's that the handlebars could do with being an inch or two higher, but this is something that's easy to fix and not a major problem. The seat is comfortable enough for everyday commuting, but for those that want to go further afield I would suggest changing it for a better padded custom model, or ask a local upholsterer to repad it for you, which is a much cheaper option most of the time. As for weather and wind protection, it's about as normal as you can get for a naked bike. Aftermarket windscreens are available, but mileage varies between the different types. My bike has a Puig screen which looks good and cuts down the wind on the chest considerably at highway speeds, but doesn't really help with the helmet buffeting. Other than that, choices are limited, and if weather protection is your primary concern, then this really isn't the bike for you. As for tech, the 2020 model, like mine, came with heated grips and a centre stand as standard. Later models dropped those two things and added a cruise control instead. But to be honest, I would rather have the heated grips on a cold winter's morning and the centre stand at any time. You also get standard ABS, not cornering ABS, I hasten to add, traction control and 2 riding modes, rain and road. So nothing fancy, but it's enough. There is a USB port, but Triumph put it under the seat, which in my opinion is a bit dumb. So you either run a cable from that, or just do what I did and fit one to the handlebars. And that's just about it for tech. Everything else you would find on any other standard bike. But what does it feel like to ride it? Well, at 236 kilos wet, it isn't exactly a light bike. It's not stupidly heavy, but you do feel it in slow speed manoeuvres and tight turns or U-turns. That said, it is a nicely balanced bike, and at normal speeds you don't feel the weight at all. When the bike was new, Triumph fitted it with Pirelli Phantom tyres, and on this particular bike they didn't fill me with confidence, which is something many T120 owners have remarked on. Now, I'm not saying the Pirellis are a bad tyre, just on the T120 they are not ideal. Recently I swapped them for Michelin Classics, and the difference honestly is palpable, now giving a much more planted feel on the road and in the corners in both wet and dry conditions. Incidentally, Michelin Classics are now the tyres that Triumph fits to all new T120s, so there must be something in it. Don't expect sports bike handling, but for a retro street bike the 120 holds its own with any other. But how expensive is it to run? Well, I get an average fuel consumption of around 60 miles per gallon UK. Insurance costs likewise are not over the top, but of course that depends on the rider. Take note though that Triumphs could do a better job of corrosion protection, so don't leave it wet after a rainstorm, and make sure that you give it a good clean. I use a water repellent. I use GT85. That also helps keep the rust at bay. Recently, however, GT85 has had the PTFE removed from it for some reason, and I don't know how much less effective it's going to be. So this is only a short review, so good and bad. The good, honestly, the timeless looks. It turns heads, people ask about the bike all the time. The low down torque, which makes pulling away from a standing start honestly a breeze. Heated grips and centre stand that I've already mentioned. And the general feel of the bike, which is sure footed and planted now that it has its new shoes. The bad, it can feel a little heavy in slow turns. The next 2 points are controversial and not everybody will agree with it, but this is just me. The spoked wheels and tubed tyres. Seriously, Triumph, give us tubeless tyres. You can keep the spokes, but the tubeless tyres are a must. Second is the chain drive. A bike like this doesn't need to have blistering power or blistering speed. In a sports bike, where that is vitally important, the chain is really the only option. But the chain is also Victorian level technology. Dump it and give us a belt or a shaft drive. So would I buy the bike again knowing what I know now? Absolutely, yes. The T120 is a great bike that can be modified to whatever you want it to be, honestly. If you want to go touring, stick a top box and panniers on it. If you want wind protection, throw a screen on the front. You might even be able to find some other things to watch your legs. But as long as you don't expect it to turn around the track at 180 miles an hour, and you're in the market for any kind of new bike, I will give it a look. Seriously, take a test ride. It just might surprise you.